Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe it.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Well, the biggest thing that we're doing, we're spending trillions and trillions of dollars between Iraq and Afghanistan and every other country that we get into where they hate us, and they as soon as we're out, they just take over whatever they want to do. Our country's falling apart.
Right.
We're building roads in Afghanistan. We're building schools in Afghanistan. They blow up the school and we build another one, but we can't build a school in Brooklyn, New York.
Afghanistan is a total and complete disaster. What are we doing? We have all of these horrible events taking place there. We can't even run our own country. We don't build our schools. We don't build our highways. We don't build anything anymore. What's wrong with us? What's wrong with our leadership? And now we have Afghanistan. Let's get with it. Get out of Afghanistan. We've wasted billions and billions of dollars, and more importantly, thousands and thousands of lives, not to mention all of these young men and women that come home and they really have problems.
What are we doing there? These people hate us. As soon as we leave, it's all going to blow up anyway. And you say, what are we doing there? We're spending hundreds of billions of dollars, trillions of dollars on this nonsense. What are we doing? We don't have money. We're a debtor nation. We can't build our own schools, and yet we build schools in Afghanistan. I'll tell you, our thinking is so far off. It just shows the leadership of this country. I mean, we just don't have it.
We go to Afghanistan, we build a road, we build a highway, we build a school at the end of the highway. The school gets blown up, the road gets blown up, and we start it all over again. Why are we building roads in Alabama? Why are we building roads in New Jersey, coming into Manhattan? You come into Manhattan on roads that look like we're a third world country. Why aren't we building our own nation? We're building things and they're blowing them up. And it's never going to change. It's never going to change. You think they're going to have democracy? I don't think so. Places like Afghanistan are safer than some of our inner cities.
Oh.
Believe that American boots should stay on the ground in Afghanistan to stabilize the situation.
I wouldn't totally disagree with it, except, at some point, are they going to be there for the next 200 years? At some point, what's going on? It's going to be a long time. We made a terrible mistake getting involved there in the first place. We had real brilliant thinkers that didn't know what the hell they were doing, and it's a mess. It's a mess. And at this point, you probably have to, because that thing will collapse about 2 seconds after they leave, just as I said that Iraq was going to collapse after we leave.
And then they stuck him in front of a teleprompter last night. And
I share the American people's frustration. I also share their frustration over a foreign policy that has spent too much time, energy, money, and most importantly, lives, trying to rebuild countries in our own image instead of pursuing our security interests above all other considerations. My original instinct was to pull out, and historically, I like following my instincts. But all my life, I've heard that decisions are much different when you sit behind the desk in the Oval Office. When I became president, I was given a bad and very complex hand, but I fully knew what I was getting into. Big and intricate problems. Terrorists who slaughter innocent people will find no glory in this life or the next. They are nothing but thugs and criminals and predators and, that's right, losers.
Oh, I'm glad he called the terrorists losers, because as far as our idiot base, that supports Trump, he just won. Because he used the word loser for terrorists. I mean, all right, so he wants to put more people in Afghanistan. He thinks that, the 100,000 troops that we had in Afghanistan around 2010 and 11, they didn't win simply because he wasn't there to will it. So, And so now he's talking about, well, he won't tell us how many, he won't tell us when, he won't tell us where, he won't tell us anything. Nothing, of course, because, it's so funny how it works out when somebody doesn't have a plan and then they say to you, well, I won't tell you my plan because I don't want to spoil the surprise. How well it works out for somebody who had no plan. So he won't tell you anything, and I have a very sick feeling that the reason why he won't tell you anything is because either he doesn't know anything, and the generals will take it from here. And he did this, to calm down the generals who are, just beside themselves. Listen, what did I say? I said you put generals in charge of the White House. You get away from civilian control of the military, and you put the military in charge of the military. This is why we have a civilian commander in chief, okay? Because you want somebody in the room who isn't, trained in killing things, basically, because that is what the military is, especially the infantry and the Marines. This is what they do. It's how you're trained. It's what you're told. You're a killing machine. This is my weapon. This is my gun. This is my weapon. This is my gun. You walk around pointing to, your penis and a gun. So when you don't have civilian control of the military, of course, the military is going to want to do what the military does best, and that's kill things and break things and blow things up. This is a president who called Afghans Afghanis. This is a president who dropped that mother of all bombs in Afghanistan while we all watched and said, what was that about? What was that about? Okay, this president doesn't know what he's doing. And so it looks to me like the military men talked him into doing what the military wants to do, which is bomb things, kill things, experiment with bigger and better and badass bombs. Either that, since he won't tell us, he just wants us to fork over our children is basically what it is. Just give me your children. I'll use them as I see fit. And you just trust me because I'm Donald Trump. No head shall be higher than mine. I don't know. But the other reason I suspect is he's going to privatize this war, meaning this is another business deal for Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a businessman. And why? Everybody is calling this a big flip-flop. Well, the latter half of that is true. This is going to be a big flop. I mean, there's no question. But I looked at Howard last night after this idiotic speech of his where he chose to mix racism with war. By the way, when you mix the thoughts that he mixed last night about Charlottesville, about how when one American hurts, all American hurts, and that we're only as good as the weakest among us, and that the military understands this, and that's the beauty of our military is they all work together across religious and ethnic and gender lines and, blah, blah, blah. That's classic liberalism. This is what I learned in the military. And, he was trying to somehow make himself, into a real person, a person who obviously can never be a real person because he has trouble denouncing the Ku Klux Klan, Nazis, Stormfront, white supremacists. He has trouble doing that when left to his own devices. So he decided to use the military as an example. I guess he can't tell us how many troops he's going to send into Afghanistan because first he has to see how many transgender troops are serving in Afghanistan, have them removed, and then do the math. I guess that's why, but this is what he said.
Love for America requires love for all of its people. Mm-hmm. When we open our hearts to patriotism, there is no room for prejudice, no place for bigotry, and no tolerance for hate. The American people are weary of war without victory. Nowhere is this more evident than with the war in Afghanistan.
Isn't that beautiful? That's so beautiful. By the way, I just want to tell you the ratings say that 17.5 million people watched this speech last night. I just wanted to grab the numbers. Obama's 2009 Afghanistan speech, 40 million people. I just want to put that out there so that, in a small prayer like, setting that it gets back to Donald Trump. That 40 million watched Obama's Afghan strategy speech and only 17.5 million watched his. Just wanted to get back to Trump. And thank God Sean Spicer is gone because he would have to square that circle. He's probably like, phew, glad I don't have to be there. But, okay, so the president of the United States has done a total 180 on his position that he campaigned so hard on. America first, no more nation building, no more wars. We must pull out of Iraq. We must pull out of Afghanistan. We have to build schools here. We have to build roads here. What are we over there building roads and schools? What are we over there doing stuff for them? We got to all come home, and all the money's got to be rerouted, and it's got to be, America first and our needs first. And that was the campaign promise. That was the entire platform that he served up to his base. Okay? America first. No one believed it. No, I didn't. I knew he was a demagogue. I knew he was a con man. I know he's P.T. Barnum with a really bad, a toop or whatever that thing on his head is. Right? So, obviously, it was just a matter of time before he learned to love the bomb. Because he is Dr. Strangelove. He's nuts. So, I'm thinking to myself last night as he's talking, this doesn't feel right to me. This feels really, really wrong to me that all of a sudden he's just learned to love the bomb. All of a sudden he's just learned to, love the liberalism of the military that we serve across ethnic lines, we serve across gender lines, we serve across religious lines, we serve across, it doesn't matter. We're all in this together, and you're only as good as the weakest among you, and we have to learn to love each other and fight together. But this makes no sense to me. And the idea that he wants to take ownership of this war in Afghanistan, a war that can't be won. I mean, even the Russians knew after 9 years it's a hopeless thing. You don't even try there anymore. Okay, you just don't. You do counterintelligence. You try and scoop up their communications. We were doing that before 9/11. By the way, this is why the presidential daily briefing delivered to George W. Bush on August 6th, 2001 said bin Laden determined to strike within the United States because we have an intelligence community that does this stuff and warns us when people are trying to plot against us, right? I mean, we knew. Of course, Bush was on vacation and he didn't want to be bothered. He told Harriet Miers he didn't want to hear the rest of it. And poor Condoleezza Rice was left to testify in front of Congress and said, well, I believe the name of that presidential daily brief that was given 3 weeks before 9/11 was entitled, Osama bin Laden Determined to Strike Within the United States. So I'm wondering, what is it that he suddenly thinks is so important about Afghanistan? And then I realized there's money to be made. But there's not money to be made if we're only sending, 4,000 GIs, if we're only sending 4,000 government-issued troops, if we're only sending, 4,000 people to augment the 8,900 that are already there. I mean, that's 13,000 people. We've already had over 100,000 troops there, and this doesn't work. It doesn't work in Afghanistan because Afghanistan is one corrupt place, one really corrupt place where it pays to fight. It pays. Okay, we've had one president after another president after another president in Afghanistan, and the tribal leaders, they have to get paid off to stand down, or they have to get paid to fight over here, or they have to get paid to fight over there, and they switch sides all the time depending on who's paying them, and it's all just one big corrupt thing. Now, I realize H.R. McMaster, when we had Petraeus as our commanding officer in Afghanistan, it's the beauty of me. I remember these things. H.R. McMaster worked under Petraeus, and his job was to do an anti-corruption thing in Afghanistan. It did not work. Because it's really stinking corrupt there. It's a way of life. So I say to myself, what is it that motivates a Donald Trump to change his mind? Money. It's always money. So then I start to look, I say to Howard, I really feel like Eric Prince is going to suddenly show up on the scene. And he said, no. And I said, yes, I really feel like this is going to be a privatized effort. I really feel like it's Back to the Future again, that Eric Prince and, Blackwater has, been renamed several times. It's hard to even figure out what it's called now. It's some say Advanti or something like this. Other people say Frontier Group. But I said, Betsy DeVos, she's the Secretary of Education, her brother's Eric Prince. There is no way that the generals could sell Donald Trump on owning this war with just American troops and only a low amount. So I started researching it. I realized that Breitbart has been attacking H.R. McMaster mercilessly, right? We all realize this, that Breitbart was going after H.R. McMaster. Why H.R. McMaster? What? Turns out the impediment between Steve Bannon's wet dream of what war should look like and Eric Prince's wet dream of what war should look like, and those two are working together and did indeed present to Donald Trump and the generals a plan to put private mercenaries into Afghanistan to the tune of $10 billion. $40 billion for American air support, $40 billion for American evacuation, aeromedical evacuation, $40 billion for food, for whatever, right? But he wants to put in private mercenaries, and he wants to charge us $10 billion for his services, and he will supply mercenaries who will embed with the Afghan army, wear the Afghan uniform. They won't be American at all. They'll embed with the Afghans. They will wear the Afghan uniform. God only knows what their rules of engagement will or won't be. God only knows who's going to have, any law enforcement, opportunities over them. God only knows, the kind of things that they will engage in. And God only knows if the war would ever end if we went all out, full out privatization of war, because then it becomes much more than our defense budget. It becomes a profit center for private industry. And I find out that Eric Prince, Steve Bannon, the head of Cerberus Capital, who also can provide private mercenaries, they hate that word, have all met, and they offered up to Donald Trump this as an option. Privatize the whole damn war. You're going to put your name on it, privatize the whole damn war. So I remembered reading about this in USA Today back in August, the beginning of August 8th, and it's in the homework section if you want to say randyrhodes.com/homework. Okay. It said Trump White House weighs unprecedented plan to privatize much of the war in Afghanistan. And it actually has Eric Prince in here saying that he's got a proposal in front of McMaster. He's got a proposal in front of Kelly, all the generals. Okay. He's got this big proposal to provide 5,500 private contractors and to 90 planes. He'll provide a private air force that would provide a close air support, and that he has, that he laid out his plan. Then I go and I read Breitbart, from Monday, just this past Monday, yesterday. Today's Tuesday. Yesterday, I read yesterday's, and he says the same thing. 5,500 troops backed by 2,000 service members, U.S. service members, and air cover. And he said that he wants us, the taxpayer and the U.S. military to provide, some bombing and to provide some aeromedical evacuation and stuff like that. And he said, as interested in diversity as the Pentagon claims to be, they aren't interested in diversity of opinions on how to end their longest war. Now, that's Prince talking, okay? And he says that, yes, the Trump administration was presented with his proposal, that he was supposed to be in the meeting that they had at Camp David. Now, Trump didn't go. The generals went to Camp David. The generals cut him out, but the proposal was presented to the president at his golf course, which is where he made these decisions, at his golf course, right? And that the proposal was presented alongside Mattis's wet dream of 70 to 80,000 more American troops, a complete withdrawal, or Prince's proposal to outsource the war to him. Now, we don't know, because the president wouldn't tell us last night which from column A he took, from column B and column. We don't know. Maybe it's a poo-poo platter of one of everything. I mean, we don't have any idea because the president won't tell us. Then, okay, that was yesterday. Then today in Breitbart, there's another long interview with Eric Prince. And Eric Prince trashes our Navy because, we're having these crashes. By the way, I think some of these crashes might be hack attacks. Do you know, like GPS spoofing and stuff like that? And we don't know who's doing it. So now the cast of characters that have something to gain by, showing the military to be lame, suddenly increases. It could be Iran because Iran supports Afghanistan. It could be Pakistan because Pakistan supports what's going on in Afghanistan. Why? Because they don't want a unified, just like the Koreans. They like the chaos in their neighborhood. It keeps the focus off of them. It could be Iran, it could be Pakistan, it could be Russia, it could be, I don't know, somebody who knows how to just spoof GPS, which is not that complicated. You can buy spoofing software now. It used to be a big damn deal with coding and all this. And now what spoofing is like your GPS will look completely normal. Your GPS, if on your car, your phone, whatever, it'll look completely normal. But instead of saying that your destination is ahead on the right, it'll tell you your destination is 200 miles ahead on the left, somewhere in Wyoming. Now that's what I think is happening to these the Seventh Fleet, because this is the fourth accident the Seventh Fleet has had. Somebody is doing this, and it's so interesting that Eric Prince decided that he would tell Breitbart today how lame our Navy is, and that's another reason why we need to get our military out. That our military sucks, and that our airplanes are old. And that, the Navy is having accidents. And Mattis's plan is 70 to 80,000 troops. And that's ridiculous when he can do it for 5,000 with 5,000 troops and $10 billion to him. What do you bet me it's business that has moved Donald Trump to the pro-war in Afghanistan column? Go to RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.